In the Special Forces, every Friday during training, we had inspection. Same time, every week. You knew you had to have all your gear clean and ready. There was never a moment where the officer had to think, should I hold these guys accountable this week or not, or when should I do it? It wasn't a decision. It was automatic. The officer wasn't sitting there building up courage or wondering about the timing. The system handled it for him. When I started coaching CEOs and founders, I noticed something interesting. Most of them were constantly frustrated with their teams because of missed deadlines or unmet expectations. There were these difficult conversations they kept avoiding. But the weird thing is they thought they needed to get better at conflict, to be more confrontational or to toughen up. But they were solving the wrong problem. The best leaders I've worked with, the ones who seem to effortlessly get high performance from their teams, aren't necessarily braver or more confrontational or more comfortable with it. They've simply built leadership into their operating system. So these are the 7 traits that separate leaders who struggle to get results from leaders who make it look easy. My name is Itamar Marani. I'm an ex-Special Forces operative, undercover agent, jiu-jitsu black belt, and the author of Elite Performance. If you appreciate me making this content for free, hit the like button below. Let's get into it. Now, let me go deeper on the Friday inspection story, because it illustrates something most leaders miss entirely. Every Friday, same time, we had inspection. Your gear had to be clean and ready, your uniform squared away, and everything in its place. Now, the beauty is that the officer never had to wonder, is this the right time to bring this up? There was no awkward conversation about whether someone's standards were slipping. The system created the space for accountability to happen automatically. Now, compare that to most businesses you know. A CEO notices an employee missing deadlines, and they think, should I say something? But is it the right moment? Maybe I'll wait for our next one-on-one. Actually, you know what? They seem stressed this week. I'm a bit stretched thin. Maybe we'll hold off. And a week passes, the problem gets worse, and by the time they finally address it, there's also months of built-up frustration on both sides on top of the actual issue. Now, what could have been a simple course correction becomes a confrontation. The best leaders, they don't rely on courage to have difficult conversations. They build structure that makes those conversations inevitable. One framework I share with CEOs comes from Matt Machari. In your weekly one-on-ones, you cover 3 things. What went well this week? What didn't go well? And here's the key part. What did you do to contribute this to not going well? Then at the end, there's a feedback exchange. The employee tells you what they liked you did and what they wish you'd done differently. And then you do the same for them. Now, here's what's interesting about this structure. It dramatically lowers everyone's resistance because the difficult conversations aren't coming out of nowhere. No one feels like they're being blindsided because there's an expected time and place for the feedback. Every week, people know they're going to discuss what didn't go well. They expect feedback, and they also expect recognition for what they did well. And this creates what I call a performance environment. Everyone understands this is how we operate. Every week, we will check in on results and exchange feedback. Yes, you'll still have difficult conversations, but now they happen within a framework everyone expects. Instead of you hunting people down or waiting for the right moment, that never really comes. So that's the first trait. Great leaders don't have more courage for difficult conversations. They have better systems that make those conversations routine and inevitable. So let me tell you about getting kicked out from the most elite unit in the IDF. I was 18. It was the final week of selection. I was very sleep deprived. And during a long march in the rain, I started falling behind. My officer dropped back to jog beside me and said, Itamar, are you okay? I'm fine. I kind of wheezed out. He said, why don't you grab a seat on the truck for a second, catch your breath, then rejoin us. Both exhausted and delirious, I agreed. And the moment I sat down, I realized what I'd done, that I quit. And the next morning, I was called into the officer's tent. My commanding officer, I remember him sitting there on his cot and in a very calm demeanor saying, Itamar, we're kicking you out for self-secession. When given an opportunity, you succumb to a weakness in your mind. You're not fit to be here. But then, in a very firm yet oddly friendly tone, he said, I wish you the best of luck. There was no ceremonial bell, no paper to sign. Basically, the moment I sat on that truck was the moment I proved unworthy to be that unit. But beyond the pain and frustration from that, here's something interesting that stayed with me. I didn't resent the officer, not then and not now, and I respected him. He was objectively correct. I quit when things got hard. At that point in my life, I viewed pain and discomfort as frustration points instead of opportunities for growth. But the way he delivered that hard truth, uncompromising it without any malice, taught me something crucial about leadership. He was able to enforce the standard without making it personal. There was no anger in him, no disappointment speech, no "I just expected more from you," just a clear statement of what happened, what it meant, and what the consequence was. Most leaders either avoid enforcing standards because they don't want to be the bad guy, or they enforce them with so much frustration and disappointment or pent-up agitation that it damages their relationship permanently. Great leaders hold the line on excellence while treating people with respect. They understand that holding someone accountable isn't a personal attack. It's actually a form of respect. You're treating them like an adult who can handle the truth. My commanding officer understood something I didn't at the time. Keeping someone who didn't meet the standard would drag the whole team down. But he delivered that message in a way that left my dignity intact. And years later, I'm grateful he did what he did. It became one of the most important lessons of my life that only happened because of how he handled it. And that's the second trait. Great leaders hold high standards without making it personal. They can be both uncompromising and compassionate at the same time. In the civilian world, people talk about accountability all the time. But here's the thing. Without consequences, there is no accountability. In the military, it's clear from day one of boot camp. If you don't perform to standard, there will be punishment. Push-ups, extra runs, revoked leave passes. Basically, when everyone gets to go home, you don't. And you learn very quickly that if you don't meet certain standards, it's not that somebody will scold you. You will actually pay a consequence you do not want to pay. And most businesses have the opposite problem. They set goals, miss them, feel bad for a day, then reset the same goal next week. No real consequence, so no real urgency. I work with a CEO who couldn't understand why his team kept missing targets. And when I looked at what happened when they missed, the answer was obvious. Nothing. Maybe a disappointed look from him, a "let's do better next week." So the cycle kept repeating. His team had basically learned through experience that missing targets had no meaningful consequence. So why would they kill themselves to hit it? Why would they stretch themselves? Now, consequences don't have to be punishment. I know where you're getting here, but they can be positive accountability structures. Some entrepreneurs put actual money on the line, make a public commitment, build consequences into their contracts and compensation structures. The key is that not executing has to actually cost something meaningful. Otherwise, you're just having conversations about accountability without any actual accountability happening. I've seen this in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. In training, you can tap out whenever you want. No consequences, but in competition, tapping means losing. The consequence is real. And funny enough, people perform completely different when something is actually on the line in competition versus training rooms. Great leaders make sure consequences are real. Not cruel, but real. They create environments where meeting the standards matter and falling short has actual implications. And that's the third trait. Accountability without consequences is just wishful thinking. One of the fastest ways to destroy a team is ambiguity. In special operations, communication has to be crystal clear because misunderstandings can cost lives. There's no room for "I thought you meant" or "I assumed we were." When I started working with entrepreneurs, I was shocked at how much ambiguity existed in their business. Vague goals, unclear expectations, roles that overlapped or had gaps. People genuinely didn't know what success looked like in their position. Then the CEO would get frustrated when people didn't deliver what they wanted. But honestly, how could they? They were never clear on what was expected. Great leaders, even though it feels tedious, over-communicate. They make expectations so clear that there's no room for interpretation. This means being very specific about what success looks like. Not improve our marketing, but generate 50 qualified leads per week by the end of Q2. It means being explicit about priorities. Not "these are all important, but if you can only do one thing this week, this is it." It means defining what good actually looks like, not assuming people know your standards, but spelling them out so clearly that anyone could evaluate whether they've been met. I had a client who kept getting frustrated with his operations manager. "She's just not getting it," he'd say. When I asked him to show me exactly what he'd communicated to her, the problem was very obvious. His instructions were vague, his expectations were implied, and he assumed she could read his mind, basically. Once he started communicating with brutal clarity, Here's exactly what I need, here's exactly when I need it, and here's exactly what good looks like, the problem disappeared. And that's the fourth trait. Great leaders eliminate ambiguity. They make expectations so clear that there's no room for confusion. In the military, officers don't sit in air-conditioned offices while their troops suffer. They're out in the front, doing the hard things alongside their team. Now, this isn't just about morale, though that does help. It's about credibility. You can't ask people to do what you're unwilling to do yourself. It just doesn't work. And I see this violated constantly in business. CEOs who demand work-life balance but send emails at midnight. Leaders who talk about company culture but treat people poorly when they're stressed out. Or executives who preach accountability but make excuses when they miss their own commitments. Your team, even if you don't like it, is watching everything you do. They're not listening to your words, they're watching your actions. And when those two things don't match, they believe your actions. One of the most respected officers I ever served under would never ask us to do anything he hadn't done himself, often in worse conditions. And when he said, "I know this is hard," we believed him because we'd seen him do it. That credibility meant everything. When he pushed us, we pushed harder. Not because we had to, but because we trusted him. He'd earned it. But the opposite is also true. I've seen leaders lose their team's respect instantly by being unwilling to do what they ask of others. And unfortunately, once that credibility is gone, it's almost impossible to get it back. Great leaders don't just set the standard, they embody it. They do the hard things first, hold themselves to a higher standard, and basically accept that they're going to lead from the front. And that's the fifth trait. You can't lead from behind a desk. People follow what you do, not what you say. In special operations, a moment of hesitation can be the difference between life and death. Speed of decision-making isn't a nice-to-have. It's survival. Now, obviously, business isn't life or death, but I've watched entrepreneurs lose millions by being slow to act on decisions they knew were right. The employee they should have fired months ago, the price increase they kept putting off, or that big market opportunity that they analyzed until it no longer existed. Most leaders wait for perfect information before deciding, and that's natural. You want to be certain. You want to have more data and eliminate all the risk. But here's the reality. By the time you have the perfect amount of information, the opportunity is usually gone. Or the problem has gotten so bad that the solution is 10 times more expensive than it would have been. Great leaders have the courage to make decisions with imperfect information. They understand that a good decision made quickly is usually better than a perfect decision made slowly. Now, this doesn't mean being reckless or not knowing your risk parameters. It means having a bias towards action, towards doing and escaping the status quo. It's about gathering just enough information to make a reasonable call and then making it. In the military, we use tabletop drills to prepare for fast decision making. Before a mission, we'd map out how things could go and have someone play the adversary. We think through all the ways it could go wrong, so we'd go in with a bank of pre-made decisions already in our head. And the best entrepreneurs I know do the same in their lane. So before investor pitches, they anticipate all the objections. Before difficult conversations, they think through likely reactions. And before big negotiations, they game it out with different scenarios with their team. When you've done that kind of preparation, decisions come faster because you've already thought through the options. You're not trying to figure it out in real time. You're simply executing a plan. And that's the sixth trait. Great leaders decide fast. They prepare for decisions in advance and have a bias towards action over the status quo and analysis. Here's a trap I see high-performing leaders fall into all the time. They get so focused on results that they let everything else fall apart. They crush it in business while their health deteriorates, or build an empire where their families slowly drift away and they lose their best people. Now, that's not leadership. That's extraction. You're mining resources without replenishing them. The best leaders I've worked with understand that sustainable performance requires protection of key assets, and that includes your own energy, your key relationships, and your team's well-being. In the Special Forces, we had a concept called good soldiering. It meant that a part of your job wasn't just about being good in the moment or with your weapon. It was about setting yourself up to perform at your best when you need to be. It was about getting proper sleep before a mission, eating the right foods, not getting sunburned when you need to be out all day, keeping your gear clean and in check. It's you making sure you're able to show up at your best long term. That's part of the job. Great leaders apply the same principle to their teams. They don't just push for results. They protect the capacity to produce more results over time. This means having guardrails, minimum viable commitments that keep important things from breaking while you pursue your main objective. Maybe it's a hard stop on work hours because you realize there's a consequence to getting burnt out. Maybe it's protected time with family because the reality is that an entrepreneur going through a divorce is less effective than one who isn't. And maybe it's mandatory recovery periods after intense pushes, so you can actually recover and think strategically. The goal here isn't to limit performance, it's to sustain it. Leaders who burn out their teams get short-term results and long-term problems. But leaders who protect what matters build organizations that can perform at high levels consistently. And that's the seventh trait. Great leaders protect the assets that make high performance possible, including themselves. So those are the 7 leadership traits that separate leaders people follow from leaders people tolerate. Build accountability into your system so you're not relying on courage. Hold standards without malice. Be uncompromising and compassionate at the same time. Make consequences real because accountability without consequences is just wishful thinking. Communicate with brutal clarity so there's no room for confusion. Lead from the front because people will follow what you do, not what you say. Make decisions fast with a bias towards action. And protect what matters so you can sustain high performance over time. None of these require you to be born a certain way. They're not personality traits, they're skills. Things you can build into how you operate and grow. The leaders who seem to make it look effortless, they've just been practicing these skills longer. They've built them into their operating system so deeply, they've become automatic. And you can do the exact same thing. And if you're leading a team and struggling to get people to actually follow through, I have a video where I break down exactly how elite leaders hold their team accountable without becoming the bad guy. And you can watch that right here.